Welcome everybody to another native paranormal Crossroads. We are joined by the Rangers and Laura Massey. Tonight's Bigfoot's aliens, UFOs, and everything paranormal under the sun, and a question and answer to the chat. Welcome everybody to our 31st show.
Wow.
Does it feel like 31 shows?
I'm not too sure. No comment. No. No,
I remember when Michelle,
it's
we
a
had her first show, and I'm like, "It's your show, Michelle." You're like, "Oh, wait."
yeah.
Oh yes, I remember that first show. Oh, that was interesting.
Time flies when you're having fun.
That's right. We have gotten a unique rapport with everyone too. So let's delve into Bigfoot's aliens, UFOs, cryptids, and anything else under the paranormal sun or
I'm going to
Wonderful.
darkness.
start. I'll start by throwing something out there. So
Yeah.
I've discussed this with John at times, but I did an investigation that involved a haunting, an office space on the reservation. And during the process of that investigation, our team used digital recorders to conduct what is commonly known as EVPs or electronic voice phenomenon uh, in recordings. So this involves taking a digital recorder and in an area that you know there's activity, asking uh, direct questions to spirit or an entity that's on the other side. So during that investigation, the investigator would ask questions. And on a number of occasions, they would get instantaneous response back. Just like just like when I ask one of you a question, you provide an intelligent, immediate response. So for us as humans, we receive that sense or through our hearing another person asking a question. Our cerebral cortex processes that information, and then we formulate a response verbally through our voice back to that individual. But with spirit, there is no cerebral cortex involved that I'm aware of. You know, how can these energies how are they able to provide an instantaneous response just like you or I would? And I've seen that repeatedly. And sometimes, like with the coins, one of the investigators asked the spirit or this energy, uh, manifest the coin or something, and no more than that person got that asked that question out, that they got hit with the coin, just like in real time. So, does spirit do they already know the questions you're gonna pose? Anyway, I wanted to throw that out there to try to get our investigators and Laura and Andrew and Dale
I
and
got
our
a little something to add here. So spirit
sure,
doesn't work in time. It's not Roman numeral. It's not wearing a watch. So if it's
right,
not past, it's not present, and it's not future, but all three simultaneously, it can experience a precognitive process and a postcognitive process. In human beings who are advancing in consciousness, I call it our precognitive workforce and our postcognitive workforce. When dealing with something that's unembodied, not embodied in a physical form, and not adhering to time, but trying to make a manifestation in time, it's trying to tune into us who are in the present. And it might tune like a radio slightly into the future, slightly into the past, but it's still its point is to make a manifestation that has chemical human red road response behind it, an actual activation of consciousness that's responding which then can tune them in more and more unique and refined questioning and answering phase.
That's very interesting, and that's
Mm.
yeah. What do you think, John? I want to hear. I know the gears are turning.
Well, I've heard it said that time could be considered a separate dimension, and we've been talking all through the series here about the dimensions and portals and gateways into these other dimensions, and how people have traveled back and forth. Who's to say that they're not also traveling in time, whether it's into the future or into the past? Um, we don't know. You know, it's even the physicists are still trying to figure it out.
Yeah,
Well,
It's
I
not me.
had a oh, okay. There's something going on in the background here. Um,
Yeah.
I had a similar experience, Stan, to the one you're talking about. I recently did an ancestral pilgrimage to find a great great grandfather who was quite a famous poet in um, a city called Bristol in the UK. And my cousin came over from New Zealand. Her grandmother and my grandmother grew up together, and it was their grandfather. And we went to the central library there, and we'd spent all day looking for all his papers and so on. And we found them in the central library in a whole book of poems that he'd written. The first poem that we opened that we were allowed to view, because he died 100 years ago. So he was born in 1832. Um, the first poem he had written described exactly the day that my cousin and I had prior to reading his poem. And he spoke
wow,
about in his poem walking down the road with two comrades, because he was quite a trade unionist in his day, a humanitarian. And he just described everything that she and I had done in that day. And he even described some of my thoughts. As I was walking through Bristol, I was thinking I'd rather be in the countryside than in a city. And that was the very last line of his poem. So um, I know that there's something, as Andrew described, like in no time, where
right.
past, present, and future simultaneously, that he had already tapped into what her and I would do or had done. Or did in no
That's
time. You can't find the English for it sometimes, can you?
yeah. Well, we tend to think time being linear.
Yeah,
From like the time we were born till the time we will leave this earthly plane, and we think in that way. But I, you know, Einstein and others have posed other theories about that. What do you think, Michelle? I want to hear. Do
I
you
think
have any
we're
comment?
talking about a frequency event here. I think we're talking about frequency and vibration. I think because recently, when your spirit is trying to prepare you for something, whether it's a health issue or whether it's a something a family member is going to be going through. I had this experience probably about 3 days ago when I heard spirit say to me, "Would it be interesting if one of your children had a health issue or had a death situation?" And I'm like, where is that thought process coming in? And I'm going to share a personal thing here. And it turns out 3 days later, one of my children has been afflicted with a health issue. So I think inspiration and spirit works with frequency. Are we in the right place, or are we going to be put into a place um, based on that frequency coming out in a very strong way, which it happened to me. I wasn't ready for that message, but it came anyway. And I think sometimes we're forced sometimes into that frequency, that multidimensional state of thought. And those are my experiences that I've had in the past with spirit being so pure like that. And I think, things open up. Like you said, the linear time, we look at things in a linear where spirit or messages come through inspiration. Is That's kind of like how we've been taught, whether it's a religious belief system. I'm getting a message from my ancestors or from God or a higher spirit and everything. So I think sometimes we are put in that frequency.
Today I often hear people saying, "Do you think we live in a simulation or something of that nature?"
Mm-hmm.
And that throws in a whole other level of
The
series
matrix,
of questions. And yeah,
yeah,
well, true, true. So,
that we
but
create our
anyway, that was
yeah, we create our own realities within our own lives. I've heard that too.
Yeah. Yeah.
That you and I could be creating our experiences in some way or form based on our frequency and where we're at in our lives. Thought is a very important power there.
There, there's a new unique equation we can do. I am dreaming you, you are dreaming me, we are dreaming each other, and the earth is dreaming all of us.
Love it. That's a good caption.
Okay? And the universe is dreaming earth. We're all interconnected.
Hmm.
Whether we're the singularity in time, I'm sorry, the multidimensional in time, or the singularity without time. For as much as we are awake, by the end of our life, we've generally had a balanced awake to sleep life. What are we doing when we're asleep and not in time? Visiting wherever, whenever. And if spirit is energy not embodied, and we're humans embodied, we have a chemical energy. They have an energy. Frequency, vibration, and harmony are the tools in which we can match space and time, in
Hmm.
which something can be exchanged, whether it's the mass of a thought or the mass of a coin.
yeah.
So, Stan, are you often thinking about coins sometimes in your daily life, or
He was a numismatist in another life.
Not at all.
a
Yeah,
bank?
he's
Not,
thinking
not at
about the
all.
lack of money.
Maybe money, but no. Uh, no, I don't. I
It's
don't
a
think about
cosmic
coins
GoFundMe operation.
Yep.
often.
Universal.
uh,
Yeah,
that
yeah.
might be John's thought thinking about
I
me,
know.
thinking, "Damn, I wish Stan would would be able to, do something so he could be financially able to
Well,
stand on his own 2 feet." So,
we kept
uh,
thinking about that 1943 copper wheat cent penny, and one actually showed up, and then the
Right.
doggone thing changed into a different date, and while it was in Stan's pocket. So obviously Stan can't hold on to his money. Uh, anyway,
You need a
the,
St. Gaudens double eagle gold coin.
yeah, we thought for sure, hey, we're going to take this one to the bank, and we'll split the
Yeah.
money up, and then
You just
when
got
we
to have a spirit that collects coins.
yeah when we found something that to finally test the penny to see if it was
Hmm.
solid steel, it changed dates.
That's interesting. That's an interesting.
It realized, hey, I can't give him the expensive coin. I got to switch it out.
Whoops.
that has
Yeah,
actually
well,
happened numerous times.
That's
Yeah,
true.
That has
it
happened
just shows
numerous
you that
times with the
that
coins.
somebody out there has a sense of humor.
Apparently so.
Trickster.
Yeah,
A trickster.
apparently so.
Trickster energy.
But yeah,
Well, this is a
but no,
fascinating subject because it's things we haven't experienced in our lives all of a sudden appear or disappear. In your case with the coins, um, but we have to, do sometimes when we're giving inspirational thoughts, we take that as I had a thought today, but I never acted on it. I mean, I'm sure we've all done that, and and things will manifest in a physical form in so many ways. I've had these experiences, and for Stan, he gets the coins. I get a kick in the butt through spirit sometimes, like, wake up. You need to be told 2 or 3 times.
Yes, me too.
I don't know. I think, on the plane that we exist, um, we are only able to see the world and the universe from a very narrow perspective, from from our known knowledge and intelligence that we've gained throughout history and stuff. But I think it's very limited. I mean, I think the universe is just like what Andrew was talking about earlier. The universe is so vast and beyond, a lot of times beyond human comprehension, and who knows, maybe our creator designed it that way to keep us guessing, or trying to figure these things out, and it's beyond our comprehension. And
I
so
have a little statement for that beyond that, because beyond comprehension, sometimes people can take not necessarily positive, but not necessarily negative, right on the edge of unlimited potentials,
Yep.
which has a whole nother way of saying what is an unlimited potential for a person. When we're on that edge of wonder, and that's what spirit really wants out of us, that innocent, wondrous state where fear is not the first response.
Well, I also believe, Andrew, because I've had this experience as of recent. It's funny how things are working out. That I think spirit or a higher power wants us to be happy in
Yeah.
like, in our processes. And so this is really simple, but a very funny story. I have been looking at dehydrators, and I used to have one, and it's
It's
somebody
good.
took it, okay, because I've got a ton of pears coming on, and I want to do fruit leather this year instead of canning. So what was really interesting is I got into a dinner conversation with my daughter-in-law, and I said, "Oh, we need to go buy a dehydrator." And she just says, "Mom, we just spent so much money on a trip." And I said, "Yeah, but I'm just going to put it out there that one's going to show up." Well, guess what? My mother-in-law had not used hers for 13 years. She buys really high-end appliances, and all of a sudden she heard me talking to one of my other daughter-in-laws, and so that I could borrow her dehydrator, and hers is being used in the moment. And my mother-in-law goes, "I have one you can have."
yeah, yeah,
And relating that conversation I had previous with my other daughter-in-law, I manifested one. So I
Yeah.
think the universe wants us to get what we need. It may
Yes.
not come in ways that we thought it would come, but it did come.
Yeah.
If you think about it, spirit has to work through what it has, us.
Yes,
And for it to get to us, sometimes it's got to go through degrees of separation to get to us. It's like the
exactly.
whole idea, 1 degree of separation, what's beyond us talking to each other, what's beyond that and beyond that. And spirit likes to work 4, 5, and 6 degrees of perception beyond our awareness, and that's the weird uniqueness of mystery, that how things just come in front of us. Like each and every person in the individual chat room spread throughout our network somehow, some way made it here today.
Yeah.
yeah. Well, a lot of times, just like what happened with Michelle, it's not a matter of how it got from point A to point B, but the fact that it did.
Yeah.
I mean, her mother-in-law hearing the fact that she was needing, a dehydrator, and now she has one.
It
So
appeared.
yeah,
Well, the
so
unseen world has this incredible way of making all those connections, doesn't it, for us? And
Right.
bringing
Yes.
in all those wonderful synchronicities, which many times it can pass people by. I think you have to be, unless it's really obvious, like it was with you, Michelle.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm sure they're there doing, working and doing all that, and like, oh, they missed it again. They didn't see it. They didn't hear it.
Exactly.
It's like,
I
what have we
the
got to
other
do?
thing the other thing is this idea of karma. I think that plays a significant role within
Uh-huh.
this, because if a person is they are submersed in negative energy and negative thought, uh, they go out in the world and they yell at their neighbor, this and that, and they're out in a community and they're just spewing toxic negativity, or among others.
Mhm.
What do you think is going to come back to them in the
Hmm.
end with all of that stuff is something very negative. And a lot of times people that are out there, they don't see that. They don't see themselves as being toxic or caustic to everybody around them. And a lot of it goes back to the ego, a person's uh, uh, how they elevate themselves above everyone else, and I'm better than you, and I'm, you know, and yeah, I think there is something to that yin yang and karma, where if you
Well,
treat people like crap, it's going to come back on you at some point.
Hmm.
so there's the karmic path, which is resolving our negativity. And then
Mhm.
there's the dharmic path, where we've learned from our negativity and we become the teacher, or on the teacher's path. And that dharmic is creating new things that could have positive karmas and not necessarily negative.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
There was a time when the world was being taught by something called The Secret. You remember that?
Yep.
Yes, I read that. Yeah.
And manifestation, get happiness, create abundance, and so on and so forth. But the rest of the story is we were never told that frequency and feeling and thought were involved. We were just told that you can manifest something by just thinking about it. Well, I'm sure all of us have thought about a lot of stuff, but none of us would have ever in 1,000 years think that we would encounter phenomena of this type, Bigfoots, UFOs. You know, I don't know if subconsciously or we were pre I don't want to say predestined to have these experiences. Getting back to the UFO subject matter, that's an interesting thought. Was that part of the secret? you know?
Well, interesting. Like your situation with the food dehydrator, you
Hmm.
had that thought, but you put it verbally out into the world to your
Right.
daughter or sister or somebody like that, you know, and then that was out there and somebody picked up on it, and you ended up with that intent. You ended up with what you had wished for or what you had thought about.
That's true. That's true.
Well, you also have to, stay on top of it. Um, it's like a muscle; it needs to be exercised, and
Hmm.
if you don't exercise it, it atrophies. And in the past, I've looked at situations that I was in. I've had jobs where the supervisors really were lacking in ability,
Right.
and and that's putting it nicely. Um, but you have situations like that where you say, "I can change this. I can do better," and yet you know that because of your inexperience, you're not going to be there. And I took the attitude of, well, eventually these guys are going to all retire, and I'll be in a position to make some necessary changes. And so you just keep with that thought. You keep that, um, I guess, the timeline of that thought in your mind at all times. It's always there. And eventually that did happen. And eventually I was able to make really good changes. One that actually saved an officer's life. uh,
Mhm.
because I was in a position to get our department its first ballistic armor. And believe me, one of our guys got chopped in the front and in the back twice on each side with a machete being wielded by a guy, and that vest saved his life. His badge was almost cut in two. And when you realize that everything has consequences, it really makes a difference when you see something like that come to fruition. Uh, so don't give up on those thoughts. You might be manifesting something. You can't just stop and say, it's not going to happen. You
Mhm.
just keep that thought in your mind. And you keep going, and it'll come true. Just not on our
Um,
time scale.
I'm
yeah.
willing to bet if you were to follow around anybody that's a first responder, you could label a variety of things in the paranormal all the time. Whether it's the coincidence that isn't a coincidence, the call that turns out to be something major, just the nature of being on the front line where charge and polarity is forcing people to do things, okay, whatever is going on. Or you happen to be driving by and your eye turns sideways and that person's being robbed, you turn around and arrest the person through your cop's sixth sense. Okay? Clearly, paranormal things are going on there.
Interesting. That's an interesting thought.
Mhm.
Can we rationalize it away? I'm sure we do. But if we stop rationalizing away and don't let there be a momentary lapse of reasoning away spirit, and allow spirit to have a reason to be there, meaning it's interacting with all of those people that are on those jobs, helping it manage the karmic resolve between the cop, the criminal, the cop, the drug dealer, or the homeless person getting beat up and somebody rescuing them. Okay.
So, Andrew, a thought into what you just said. The question I have for that is, so Jonathan was trained to do his job. He was doing his job at the same time
Mhm.
somebody's life was being uh, saved. Um, that that basically a cop's job, and I don't want to say cops, law enforcement job is to protect the person that could potentially get hurt and themselves.
Mhm.
And so Jonathan being the intercedes that, and he prevents people from getting harmed.
Sure.
Is that a karmic way of
Yeah.
living?
Yeah.
Okay.
I call that he is the police and first responders are spirit's vanguard. They
Okay.
chose before birth that that would be a part of their grander service.
Okay.
And with that, Spirit said, "You're choosing to be of service. You're going to be in a vehicle traveling around. You're going to be doing this job. I'm going to align a whole bunch of things for your career." Okay, each and every one of them will still be a choice of how you respond to it, out of fear, angry, whatever the training tells you. Each one will have a variety of free will choices all the way through it. But every person that they've ever arrested or let go or helped or saved or whatever, was there a plan before birth? I would say yes. But
Interesting.
the choices that go once it happens, that's where I believe free will takes over. Spirit likes to line patterns. Okay, pattern
Interesting.
recognition, pattern recognition. And if you're a police officer long enough, that pattern recognition becomes a sixth sense for you, right? Would you agree? You see a pattern, and that pattern says something's going to happen, and I have to pay attention to it.
Today, more and more, you're seeing law enforcement officers involved in criminal behavior,
Hmm.
and and you're seeing more officers ending up in prison because of their own actions, and that's kind of sad to see. And really, that's part of one of the reasons why I got out of law enforcement.
Mhm.
That that occurrence was happening more and more and more and more, and to me that didn't represent what it was that that I stood on, my ground that I stood on, going into law enforcement. And uh, so yeah, today you see that, and it's really really sad, really upsetting. I mean, that you see people end up taking, they should be there protecting life, not out there deliberately trying to injure people and take life.
So I suppose, Stan, what you're saying is community has changed their mindsets, their karmic way of living, because we could look back on timelines. The 50s were very after the war, and people are wanting to get their lives in a more peaceful way. So you've got this 50 illusion of everything's wonderful in our world and we're rebuilding, and this whole thing, mother is in the home, father's out working, women were pretty much didn't have a dominant role. And so are we talking about spirit has changed, community conversations, community way of living, and now we're in a destructive mode? I mean, if we look through the patterns of our decades, we progressively have gotten worse, to the point we don't feel safe in our own jobs, if you know what you're saying in respect.
Well, for me, I think that it's always been the same. When you go back into history and you look at everything in its totality, you find that, yeah, there were good cops, there were bad cops, the same as we have today.
Hmm.
The thing that changed was the information that was getting out. Back in the Wild West, you had the situation where the fastest thing you could have was a telegram.
Right.
And even that was, you had to pay by the word to get a message. And so it was very limited. And other than that, it was word of mouth, or somebody was traveling and brought a story with them. Now you have instantaneous stuff going on. Homicides and rapes are being live streamed, as they're happening. And, the police are really ill equipped to handle that kind of stuff. And the word's getting out almost immediately. As soon as something happens, it's put up there for everybody to judge, and irregardless of whether it was right or wrong. And so we're in this information age that that's really a wonder, and at the same time a horror to view. Um, and I've known people that just today they just flat refuse to get on the internet or to look at TV because it's so mind boggling, and it creates such stress and fear. And you know, again, trying not to stay political, but what do our politicians like to do? They push that fear button. Oh, the immigrants are going to do this, the immigrants are going to do that, just because they're a different color. And yet we were founded. The whole idea of the United States was founded on accepting immigrants and them becoming citizens. And yet the immigrants make up uh, a huge population of our military.
Hmm.
You know, Native Americans actually, we weren't immigrants; we were here first, but we still provide more people to the military than other peoples combined. And so it's rather a perplexing situation that the fear button is constantly being pushed, and that shouldn't be, you know. But if you're going to be negative about it, things that creates its own life,
So
and
we're being desensitized to the things that we used to be sympathetic to
yeah, yeah,
through information.
and it's really sad to see because
Yes.
if you are in any way empathetic, if you're an empath, you can sense emotions. You can feel those emotions. When you get into a big crowd of people, it's hard for empaths because they walk into these situations and they're bombarded with emotions all around, negative, positive, indifferent, and it's hard to function
Right.
because your mind is being overloaded. And I found out for years and years I thought I was just suffering from agoraphobia, you
Hmm.
know, the fear of crowds. And,
Right.
and if I went to Disneyland, I'd have to psych myself up for 3 days to just to go. Um, and then I found out later that hey, if you're an empath, if you have this gift or curse, then it's going to affect you. So, it's just one of those things that you have to learn to live with and deal with.
Later, he found out he had a fear of mice.
Mice?
A mice.
Mickey Mouse, Disney.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
I'm just teasing.
Yeah. Oh, Mick Mouse.
I'm just teasing. Yeah, it's very interesting.
it's in the spirit of.
Yeah.
Go.
Yeah. He made billions of dollars and it's still going.
That was karma.
Yeah. Good old Mortimer.
Mortimer, yeah.
But
Well,
So does
so getting back to the UFO subject matter, we are also being desensitized in that area as well. And I believe that there are military processes. You hear things of Tic Tacs and UAPs, UFOs, qualifications of things that are being presented to the public, but nothing is really being disclosed. So there is a control factor there. And so when people have pure experiences seeing this phenomena, they're kind of like labeled as crazy. You didn't see that, that didn't happen. You got to have all this evidence. But what about that spirit that, maybe spirit is trying to reach out through that phenomena as well? That's an interesting topic in itself.
John?
mm,
I know you're thinking.
I'll take that. I'll
I
take
know
that.
you're thinking there's
Get on
something.
your
I,
political bandwagon
I
there.
can see it.
yeah. How does it go? My mind is coalescing into a myriad of different thoughts. um, effervescing
Hard
and
question.
flowing as we speak. Um,
That was a lot of questions, but it's in one question. But yes, are we
yeah, it's
desensitized as
Remember,
well?
she was a reporter, investigative reporter. That's where that's coming from.
Yeah, exactly. Uh,
there are reasons for everything. We just don't understand. We
Right.
don't have the capability of understanding because we're so enmeshed in our day to day lives. You're worried about am I going to get Starbucks and what should I get today? Am I going to get a Dutch Bros? All the minute details of our lives that we just obsess over. And we lose track of a big picture, you know. And you get involved in this stuff. I do it too. I go through my week, and before I know it, the other day I wear these. They call it a continuous glucose monitor,
Mm-hmm.
and it seemed like just last week I was down there getting my 1 month supply at the hospital, and yesterday I received a message. Oh, you need to come in on this date, and pick up some more. And I'm going, what? What happened to the month? Where did it go? And I'm realizing that every day, all this minutiae of stuff is happening that's just taking all my attention. And and you just get lost in it. And then pretty soon, boom, a month's gone. And you're going, where the heck did that month go?
Right.
So, it's I don't know. Maybe I time jumped. I have no idea what happened to all that whole month. And I'm
This
just
is
thinking, you
this
know,
is an interesting question. Have you heard about the 8-foot entities that recently landed in Navajo? Scared this poor guy who videotaped the event. Has anybody heard that recently?
I'm
Oh,
not
No,
aware
I
of it.
have not heard about that one, but there's been a massive sightings of UFOs from San Diego to southern Texas, like hundreds in the last 3 weeks.
are they being videotaped?
Yes, yes, weird stuff. And then also Belgium, Sweden, the amount of UFOs that's the sightings through there going through the roof.
well, if they landed
Maybe
on Navajo, um, they could be what we would consider Yebiche, the gods that you see depicted on rugs and sandcastles that are extremely tall. And so, again, in a different culture and a different time, it would have been seen as different. Now, we're trained to automatically go alien. And not only that, but they're from outer space, from interstellar space. And so, we label things, and it makes it easier for us to kind of understand.
he said this gentleman who had witnessed this had put up lights everywhere after an event. It scared them, and he also said they landed too and met him face to face. It's an
Yeah,
interesting experience. We need to
I
look.
haven't heard anything. I've been so busy with the book process lately.
Yeah,
I don't. I have no idea what's going on around me. So
that's something we should investigate. There you go. That would
Do
be
you guys remember the Miami Mall sighting in May 1st of
yes,
January? Well,
yeah,
since that date, the 8-foot aliens, similar to what this person is talking about, it happened to a mall in Japan, a mall in China, in Tenshin, China. So it's happened a few different times, as well as in Las Vegas.
yes,
Okay, remember the Las Vegas one? And
yes.
now this recent rash of sightings through the American Southwest from San Diego to Texas, we're talking like 300 to 400 sightings in 3 weeks.
That's crazy.
Okay. Police officers, everything, everybody from every range of people are seeing the lights in the sky. And somebody was asking, right now, X is one of the best places, X slash Twitter. Just go into their search and type in UFO sightings today. YouTube is kind of weird. It takes them down frequently, or you can go to some of those other channels, but there has been a massive amount of sightings in the American Southwest.
Well, for us historically, we've had landings and sightings of occupants in the past. We've investigated them officially. And it does happen, all over the Navajo Nation. And so it's not unusual. To me, it isn't. This stuff happens. People see things, they see uh, occupants or crew walking under these ships that are landed out in the middle of nowhere. Um, So there's a lot that happens. Um,
I mean, you guys did get the job as paranormal rangers on the Navajo Nation because it happened so many times.
well, the thing there is that people were um, frightened. They didn't know
Yeah.
what it was, and they wanted somebody to talk to. And when they go up to a police officer and they're told we don't handle that, I'm sorry, I can't help you. And people are distressed, especially when a Bigfoot takes your sheep. And sheep for the Navajo is a sign of wealth. That's what they have.
Hmm.
And and then sheep today, they're a little bit expensive. If you were just to go down the road and buy from somebody, they charge you a bunch. So um, they're so expensive that I even had one person that actually drove their sheep across a highway that was pretty busy in order to get them killed so that they could collect insurance money. It was an insurance scam. And they'd say, well, you killed so many of my sheep, I want this much money. And, they'd inflate the price of the sheep, and the insurance company would just pay it because they had no idea. So, the paranormal stuff that happens, it's ongoing, and it has been ongoing um, for generations.
I wonder when it will be all become so normal that it's not paranormal anymore.
Well, it is on the Navajo. Um, they don't wait for disclosure. They already know that these things are there. They know Bigfoot exists. They know UFOs come and land or hover in front of their houses, or hover above their houses. They know all this stuff, and yet we're still catching up, and we're saying, well, do you believe? Do you just accept it on faith that this stuff exists? And most Navajos, they say, oh, this stuff happens out here all the time. What's the big deal?
And it's very much been part of your history as well, hasn't it?
Oh yeah, from the very beginning.
Yeah.
Uh, Ever since the emergence, when we came up through what we're considering a portal from a different world into this world.
That's why we call them the star people.
Mm.
Somebody was fleecing the insurance company with their sheep.
Yeah, you could say that.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's interesting. I haven't heard any questions other than that about the Navajo experience. I did look on the internet and looked at there was a network who picked up a story on that back in 2022 that there was landings on the Navajo reservation. About the
Yeah.
time the ones that were showing up in Vegas and, NBC Nightly News catches a UFO on camera during a story about Navajo Indians on December 16, 2022. So that's something the audience can research if they like. That's the only one I'm finding.
The last time Iran fired all those drones at Israel, I don't know, 4 or 5 months back,
Yeah.
there was Al Jazeera channel that was showing the missiles coming in, and all of a sudden, three triangle craft showed up and started shooting the missiles down, and it was on camera for about 5 minutes before they realized there were triangle craft shooting down the missiles.
I've
So
heard about.
mistakes like that happen all the time.
Yeah, with that Navajo incident, I'll have to ask my daughter when she gets home. She's the one that's tapped into everything. And we always tease out here about Navajo telegraph. If you ever,
Mhm.
natives, if you want something to get out there, you just tell somebody else, and it just spreads all over the place, and pretty soon it's common knowledge. So, I'll have her look at Navajo Telegraph and see what's going on.
Smoke signals.
Yeah, yeah.
There you go. There you go. A lot of fires going on. This person asks, why do the alien hover over people's house? Don't they have something better stuff to do? That's a good question. Other than the little joke on the end, but no, that's a good question. Why do they hover? Any thoughts?
You're their soap opera.
I don't know. For all I'm concerned about is that they could be scanning uh, the house. We could be like an ant farm, and they're just looking at the crazy ants running around. Um, you know, we don't know. We try to put our our stamp on it, our interpretation, and we just have no idea. I had one woman who saw a cigar-shaped UFO. She said you could see the pilot sitting in the front. He was just facing forward. He wasn't moving around or anything. And she says it was hovering above her house, maybe about 20 feet above the roof. And then it zipped off and it made a huge circle over maybe 30 miles, and then came back over and hovered over her house again. This time she called all her kids out, and they all stood there watching it. And then it took off again, came back, and same thing, it hovered again. And after a while, she started thinking, hey, this is not normal, and we should get back in the house and hide. And they did. And after that, they said it took off and didn't come back. So, I have no idea. Things like that happen. And, we get reports on it. We look at them, we try to verify. We do, we have in the past taken background radiation readings to see what's normal in one area and what's normal in that area,
Hmm.
with no residual effects that were found. Um, it's a mystery to us too.
Like we said earlier in the show about this spirit working through us, is that another way for spirit working through us and with us to expand our consciousness, preparing experiences for us? Could be that too.
Yeah, that
Well,
could
I
be.
think, you know, there are those individuals and families that are predispositioned to have a lot of these paranormal experiences. And there are other families and individuals that don't have anything. They don't they just go through their lives and there's nothing experienced in the way of paranormal. So
And one of the things that we do know, especially with abduction cases, is that people who have said or thought that they've been abducted, a lot of times the families, the associated children, will also have abduction experiences.
Hmm.
And it goes on, it goes through family lines. So, to me, are they trying to isolate some DNA strand that's within that family? Or are they looking at blood? We don't know. We don't have the ability to comprehend what they're doing. If you look at 1492, when people first started coming to the shores here, and even before that with the Vikings and the Chinese, they all came for different reasons. And so you couldn't say, oh, they just came for this thing. They came for thousands of different reasons. And in Columbus's case, he was lost and missed the turn, and came this direction. He thought he was somewhere else.
Right.
So um, everybody is here for a different reason, and maybe that's why we have different alien species that are coming here that are recognized as different from each other. And maybe they all have slightly different agendas as to what they're here for. And we're trying to pick out one and say, well, this is globally what they're doing. And of course, we're influenced by the 1950s and 60s science fiction, where every alien that came was here to conquer us. And so that's always a thought in the back of everybody's mind is
Mhm.
when is the invasion going to start?
Yeah, you don't hear any good alien invasion stories. They came here to help us. It all ends in dystopian futures instead of humanity is raised up and we're elevated to the stars and it was all happy and kumbaya.
ET, extraterrestrial, Spielberg.
But humans still try to kill him and experiment on him. Come
That's
on.
very true. Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Um, you
Yeah,
know,
somebody mentioned black elk having uh, some concourse with aliens in the past. And, our friend Clifford Mahooty used to speak about that kind of stuff all the time. He said that, with the Zuni, that the aliens would visit them all the time. The star people would come to them and they would have discussions. And, you know, medicine men are on a different spiritual level than the rest of us. They've spent their whole lives studying this stuff, and they know the frequencies, and they can slow down time when needed, and do other things. And it's all very mysterious, and they don't come out because they don't speak English very well for the most part, so they don't come out and do a doctoral thesis on every little thing that's going on. But if you ever get the chance to watch a true medicine man at work, it's amazing. And it'll you'll see orbs, you'll see all kinds of stuff. It'll just blow you away. Uh, but you have to have a reason to be there. So
well, I mean, Jonathan, I had talked in previous shows about my grandmother and my mother having that experience where they're at the Hogan and thinking that their uncle's coming down the road with his car, and then of course the two orbs lights that were there were coming down the hill, and then they went off in different directions. And then my great grandmother, told my mother, uh, those are our ancestors checking up on us, kind of, as the conversation went on. So the Navajos believe that our ancestors do come in and visit us and check on us from time to time. And I'm wondering, if this craft is, they're so technologically advanced that they come check on us, you know and there was a movie depicted. It was with a Navajo woman who was looking for. They were having water shortage, and on the reservation, and for some reason, the grandmother to this young son, he was living in the 20th century and kind of a little piece of work, and he was trying to help his grandmother, and she always has this ancestral. She says, "Don't worry, we'll always have water." And the water will come and we'll be fine. And all of a sudden she's taken up to wherever and he can't find her and it starts to rain. And so, that's sort of the tie-ins that you're talking about. Our DNA is tied into the star people and they're here to help us.
Well, I think we're getting close to the top of the hour, I believe.
yeah, again, it seemed like we just got started, and we're already running out of time. So I don't
I
know
know.
where the time goes.
I really enjoyed the discussion, though. I mean,
Yeah, the time's not linear. It's just, it is the conversation we're having is very interesting. And there's some lot of thoughts that have come up that I need to think about. myself. Any thoughts, Dan or Jonathan or Laura?
Well, linear time, we think of it as a straight line, and yet we know that that's not actually true. If you're talking about gravitational fields, you're talking about um, time dilation, uh, speed of light stuff. It just goes on and on and on, and so time isn't the same along the same line. And today's show is kind of proof of that. The time just went zip and it was gone. So what do they say? Wibbly wobbly, timey wimey stuff. It just there's just no way to understand it. It just goes.
Time eludes us, right?
Yeah,
So, yeah.
Yes.
But it's been fun. It's been a fun conversation. We will do a part two. It's looking like we need to, because there's much more we can discuss here and have our
Oh,
audience
definitely.
start to ask questions that have been posing on their minds that we'd like to discuss and share our stories of what we know. Any last thoughts, Laura and Stan and Jonathan?
I just
No,
want to say thank you for everybody that joined us today. It's been a good show.
Have a
yeah,
great day.
it's been fabulous as ever to and get some great questions from the audience, and we really appreciate you coming in on the chat.
Yeah,
It's
and
really
subscribe to our website, our show, and we'd love having you on board.
yeah. And we will see you next week. Same bat time, same bat channel.
Don't forget to like and
Absolutely.
subscribe.
Yeah.